If I was to ask you when the golden age of Marvel movies and shows was, what would you say? Would you say the Paramount era with movies like Iron Man, Captain America, the First Avenger, The Avengers, X-Men First Class, and The Amazing Spider-Man? Or maybe the mid-2010s to 2020 era with content like The Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy Volumes 1 and 2, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Daredevil, Punisher, X-Men Days of Future Past, Logan, Deadpool 1 and 2, Spider-Man Homecoming and Far From Home, Into the Spider-Verse, Captain America Civil War, and of course, Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. That's definitely been my favorite so far. Or maybe some of you out there would say the current pandemic/post-pandemic era with projects like WandaVision, The Falcon and Winter Soldier, Loki Seasons 1 and 2, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, Spider-Man No Way Home, Shang-Chi, and of course Across the Spider-Verse and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We've been spoiled over the past 20 plus years with an almost overwhelming amount of Marvel movies and shows, and I didn't even list all of them. But what if I told you that I fully believe we have not entered the golden age of Marvel movies and shows just yet? Now, for the sake of this video, when I refer to the golden age of Marvel movies and shows, I'm referring to the quality of said projects, not the money made. So because I'm talking about the quality, this is totally my own opinion, which may be different than yours, and that's totally okay. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments down below. Just make sure to stay civil and kind to each other. Remember, at the end of the day, we're all Marvel fans. So you might be saying, but Dingus, how can it get better than the mid-2010 to 2020 era? And I'd say back, viewer, that is a fair question. And it is. Most of my top Marvel movies and shows are in that era. But there are 3 reasons why I think it can, and more importantly, will get better. The first is everyone is back together. At this point, it seems like a given that after Secret Wars, the MCU will be soft rebooted into what I'm calling the MCU 2.0. Meaning, we will finally have a Marvel Cinematic Universe with every character in it. Steve Rogers, Tony Stark, Mr. Fantastic, Cyclops, Wolverine, Spider-Man, just to name a few, all under the same roof. This is something that has never happened before in live action. If you thought we experienced the golden age of Marvel before, when a lot of the characters were separated, just imagine what those stories could look like with everyone together. Now, I doubt they straight up redo the big events they've covered already, like Civil War and Infinity Gauntlet anytime soon, but there are still tons of events in the comics to adapt and an infinite number of original stories to tell that they can now use every single character for. The X-Men events in particular, for example, I'd place heavy money on the MCU doing proper adaptations of Dark Phoenix, Apocalypse, and maybe even Days of Future Past, which is one of my favorite comic book movies ever, by the way. Now, they aren't just limited to only using X-Men characters, which also ties into a theory I have that Avengers vs. X-Men is the next big event that we're going to build towards. If you want to hear more about that theory, click the card on screen right now. Now, I know that comic is not the most beloved, but look at what the MCU did with the Spider-Man One More Day adaptation with No Way Home. It's far superior, even though, yes, it's not a straight adaptation, but none of the MCU adaptations have been, nor should they be. The mere idea of a good Avengers vs. X-Men movie is, for me, a nerd dream, and the fact that it's very, very likely is incredibly exciting for me. Number 2, we have a change in tone. A common critique of the MCU has been how quote-unquote cookie-cutter it's been and how similar in tone the movies and shows have been. Now, I don't agree with that critique, especially when it comes to phases 4 and 5, but especially now we're seeing Marvel lean slightly more and more into the mature and serious, with Echo now being confirmed to be TVMA, which also pretty much confirms Daredevil Born Again is going to be TVMA as well, Deadpool 3 being the first R-rated MCU movie, and then Blade also being confirmed to be rated R, and Marvel Zombies being TVMA. It seems that Feige is testing the waters to see how the mainstream audiences will react to R-rated movies and shows in the MCU. And safe to say, as long as those movies and shows are actually good, it's likely the R rating won't be complained about. Moving into the MCU 2.0, it seems clear that Feige will be varying the tones and ratings of projects more so than we've seen and will see in Phase 5, which, in my opinion, is really exciting. But not only the tones, styles have also been varying more from project to project, sometimes within the same project. If we take a look at Phases 4 and 5 so far, there's really no way you can argue a movie like Multiverse of Madness is the same style as The Falcon and Winter Soldier, which is not the same style as Thor Love and Thunder, which is not the same style as Secret Invasion, which is not the same style as She-Hulk, which is not the same style as Guardians 3, and so on and so forth. Even Loki Seasons 1 and 2 have very, very different styles. Now, this doesn't mean every style is going to work well for everyone, but I don't know. For my money, I'd rather have a unique style and vision and it not work than have a generic movie. Which leads perfectly into the third reason: audience reception has changed. In the past few years, the mindset from people towards the MCU and superhero stories as a whole has changed. While a lot of it is just people online hating just for money, some of it is warranted, specifically the critique about a lot of these stories being just generic. It's what makes movies like Across the Spider-Verse and Guardians 3, for example, so special. As more and more people start to share this belief, it ultimately forces these projects to be better because they are no longer forced to be generic, which could also, like I said, lead to some of these projects being worse, but as they say, you gotta crack some eggs to make an omelet. This forces writers and directors and producers like Kevin Feige to have to think more creatively with the way they tell their stories. We saw that a little bit with the special presentations, which I hope continue, but let's just use the obvious example here, James Gunn. Maybe the most generic of his superhero stories was Guardians 1, but even that is only by comparison to his others. The Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, and Guardians 3 are all, at least in my opinion, very much the opposite of a cookie-cutter generic superhero story, which is one of the many reasons why a lot of people, including myself, love them. And like I said, Across the Spider-Verse is another perfect example. As we get closer and closer to the MCU 2.0, I think we're going to continue to see a decrease in the generic superhero stories in favor of more creative ones, and I don't see how anyone can say that's a bad thing. A big factor of the upcoming MCU 2.0 being the quote-unquote golden age of Marvel movies and shows is us and how we mentally go into these projects. We're going to be getting new actors for a lot of characters we have grown to love. A new Steve Rogers, new Tony Stark, new Wolverine, most likely also a new Thor, Hulk, Loki, Black Widow, Hawkeye, even possibly a new Doctor Strange and Captain Marvel, who knows? We have to go into these projects with an open mind. As much as you can help it, allow these new interpretations to be just that, a new interpretation. They don't and shouldn't have to be exactly like your predecessor. They don't even have to be better than what came before. I know for me, it's going to be super difficult to have a better Steve Rogers and Chris Evans. These new interpretations just have to be good. But hey, it's also totally possible these new interpretations are better than what came before, and we also have to be ready for that, instead of just being stubborn and saying no one will ever be better, which is going to automatically make you dislike the new version. Look, the past 15 years of the MCU has no doubt been the golden age of Marvel movies and shows so far. My favorite comic book movies and shows of all time are in this era. However, I firmly believe that the best is yet to come. Could be my optimism and positivity speaking, but I'm curious, what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below, and feel free to subscribe for videos every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you next time.